Jef Marek is the host of The Sheet, weekdays at noon Pacific time here on the Nation Network.
Yes.
I have a question. Should I be wearing purple or gray cadaver gloves as we go over the perspective? Like how do we want to do? Are we doing the full autopsy yet? How are we handling this at this point?
We've described it as
rubber blanket over the patient yet? Like how are we doing this?
No. We're just on our way to the church. We're just on our way to the church now. We are still early in the process.
Okay, very good, very good. I'll be respectful. Thank you.
Yeah. It's
I think Matt like that. Got a little Voltairean smile about him right now.
Well, we were just talking. When your team misses the Stanley Cup playoffs, it's an excruciatingly long off season. So, Jef, we're going to have like the better part of 21 weeks here to go over.
We got to be careful.
Postmortems,
pointing forward too much.
Right.
Ration.
Gotcha.
Over the spring and summer. But
Hansel and Gretel, little breadcrumbs. Okay.
So anyway, what UFA are they going to sign on July 1st?
No, we're not there yet. We're not there yet. Although we've already done some of that. We've had the Sam Bennett discussion several times with Marek.
Who are they going to offer, Sheet? Are they going to go for Dostal and
we've had the
McTavish?
offer,
How are they going to do this?
Exactly.
Jeff, almost like we saw this coming.
Yeah.
Almost like we saw it.
Yeah. So Elliot reports the Canucks are real pissed. Think the Flyers may have tampered with Tocchet here. Do they have any recourse? Do these tampering allegations ever go anywhere? And
there's no real evidence of it either.
Is it already July 1st? They're already talking. There was all those rumors about tampering around Mikko Rantanen. Now there's this about this notion of tampering with Rick Tocchet. Look, the minute that John Tortorella was fired, where's the first place your head goes? Like everybody, like a casual or hardcore hockey fan. Like you don't have to have, been a teenager in the 80s to understand the association between number 22 in orange and the Philadelphia Flyers. So I don't know. I know that, listen, at the beginning of the season, all joking aside, at the beginning of the season, the NHL did send out memos to all teams saying that this is the season that they are cracking down on tampering. Normally, this all occurs around July 1st when very sophisticated contracts are presented at 12:01 Eastern. I think we can all still remember the days of, the Dallas Stars with three hockey players in front of a desk, or sorry, behind a desk at 12:01 Eastern on free agent day.
They just happen to be there. They just happen to be there
in the neighborhood. I just kind of signed a contract in 30 seconds, and here they are. I know that the NHL takes it seriously, so I'm not surprised to see any sort of finger wagging or suspicious eyes directed at people, because this is, once everybody understands that the NHL is going to take this seriously, a lot of times teams will take that opportunity to say, hey, hands off our guy. There were all those whispers around Rantanen, and now I suppose same about Tocchet, although again, I don't necessarily think that's the way that the Flyers are going to go with their coaching decision if they are given that opportunity. I already had that once, but you don't need to be a hardcore hockey fan to understand how that one would work.
And at the same time, it's all self-inflicted here by the Vancouver Canucks, who have waited to this point to sign Rick Tocchet. And we actually have empirical evidence of bungling in the past with regards to the firing of Bruce Boudreau and hiring of Rick Tocchet, not to mention how the whole Horvat, Pettersson, Miller signings.
They tampered with TNT. TNT was big mad, losing an analyst mid-season.
Biz and Anson are going to be pissed. Liam's going to be hot. He's calling his lawyer.
They've had difficulty with timing, though, the Vancouver Canucks have, and it's coming back to bite them again here.
There are just some teams in some eras where you say you really need a book about this. Like someone really does, nudge, nudge. Anybody listening or watching right now, maybe the two gentlemen I'm speaking with, maybe someone has some time off this summer and wants to write a book about what just happened over the past few seasons with the Vancouver Canucks. But clearly, this is one of those times where at the end of all of this, whenever there is an end, there needs to be someone that captures this officially.
Because a long-time beat writer here,
best soap operas in the game.
a longtime beat writer here just wrote a book. It is still hot off the presses called Never Boring. And now there's been all of this since it went to press.
Yeah, I know.
He needs to write an addendum, Ed Willis does, to this book.
Keep going. And Ed's written some great ones. My favorite is the Rebel League, which is a tremendous league, which is why I encourage every single hockey fan to league the stories of the old WHA. But yeah, absolutely. This is an ongoing story. This is the overflowing well for Ed, if he wants to write an update here. But there's been the drama season continues. And the drama is going to continue for the remainder of the season and into the off season past July 1st.
Now, one thing the Canucks do, Jeff, is they ultimately do get a lot of business done. Like, it's noisy, it's messy, but ultimately the business does get done. Miller eventually got signed, and then he eventually got traded. Like, all the drama around him. They eventually fired Boudreau. They eventually hired Rick Tocchet. They do eventually get around to business. So are they just eventually going to get around to signing Rick Tocchet and all this noise is going to die down, or does it lead somewhere else this time?
Let's just park that for 1 second. So yeah, eventually business does get done, but then you have to ask yourself, at what cost? And how much is damage? Like, I used to always say, if you told me that from now on, whenever you park your car, you have to be driving 60 kilometers an hour. One day I might be able to figure out how to do that, but gonna damage a lot of cars in the process. But finally, I'll figure out how to park when I'm going at that elevated speed. Look, I did it. Yeah, but look at the wreck you had. Like, look at the mess that you left in along the way. That's the one thing that I wonder about. Like, what I always consider, what are the cascading effects? Like, sure, they, eventually they finally made up their mind and got it done with Bruce Boudreau. What was the damage that was fraught along the way? Sure, eventually they made the deal with JT Miller and the New York Rangers, but what was the damage along the way? Maybe they end up getting this deal done with Rick Tocchet, as messy as it may look right now. Like, part of this looks like the closing sequence from Reservoir Dogs, right? Like, you might get it done, but there's going to be a body count to it. And that's what you always wonder about. Like, what is the cascading effect here? Sure, we got it done, but look what's behind the scenes. And what is this going to mean for this player and that player and this manager and this coach, etc.? None of this, like, the thing about it is none of it's clean. Right? Like, none of it's clean. I know, listen, all Canadian markets are noisy markets. I'm in Toronto. You guys are in Vancouver. These are the two of the noisiest markets in the country. Brian Burke would always tell me, when you make a mistake, the worst place to be is Montreal, because you're dumb in two languages. Like, there are noisy markets in this country. The bonus of that is you have really engaged hockey fans. But none of this has been clean. Like, none of these decisions got there in a tidy way, and I think that's really one of the problems here. I heard you guys talking about Pettersson on yesterday's show. I thought your opening segment was outstanding. Like, already think to yourself, like, what is the damage already with Elias Pettersson in this situation? We probably won't know now for a little while.
Stuck in the middle with you.
Nice. You love your old Tarantino flicks like I do.
So I want to ask you a question about your understanding of tampering. There was a situation here in the last week in the NCAA basketball tournament. The head coach of Maryland, while his team was in the Sweet 16, was rumored to be moving to Villanova, which is a big, huge job in that sport. And somebody asked him, have you been in contact with Villanova? And he said, I haven't talked to my agent yet. And Jay Billis, the college basketball analyst, went, excuse me, coach, like, the agent is a representative of you. So if your agent is talking with Villanova, then in fact, you are talking to Villanova. That's how agency works.
Yeah.
If
that's tampering.
Tocchet's agent, it's impossible to prove. They don't have subpoena power on an agent's cell phone, and so that's how this all gets done. So it is tampering, but it's just impossible to prove.
Can I give you an example? This is one of my favorites. Like, this is absolutely one of my favorites. There's one ex-manager who I was having a conversation with years ago who said, because I was like, you guys are the worst. Like, we all know you tampered. He's like, I've never talked to an agent about a player who's under contract. And I'm like, come on. He goes, no, but I have said things like this. Call up agent X. I'll tell you, this offseason, I'm looking for a left-hand shot, about 6'2", maybe 215 pounds. I don't know, maybe played his junior in Red Deer. I'd probably go 4x4. If only I could find someone like that. Anyhow, I'll talk to you later, knowing full well that agent has a client that fits that outline specifically, but never said the name. Like, we all know the tampering goes on. Everybody.
And
talks,
is that wrong? Like, do we care that happens, Jeff? Like,
yeah.
like that seems reasonable to say. By the way, I've got room for 4x4 for the off season. See you later.
I know. The league does, and listen, if you want to sort of promote, fairness, certainly, and respect contracts. I mean, the minute you stop respecting contracts, then everything's on the table, and it's complete chaos. We all know that it happens and has happened. I just know, like, all I can really share in the conversation about tampering in the NHL is this is the one year that finally they alerted all teams. We all know you do it. We all know it happens. But if anybody gets caught, it's going to be trouble. Okay. It's going to be real trouble here.
Let's move on to Pettersson, because that flared up again this week. You heard Tocchet's comments about his updating his injury. Do you think Rick Tocchet and Elias Pettersson can coexist? And is there a lesson to be learned for the Vancouver Canucks about trying to force people to coexist from the Miller-Pettersson saga?
So I heard on your show yesterday, and I thought to myself, this is a poll question aimed at one person, Quinn Hughes. Because in Quinn Hughes' mind, he wants both. He likes Rick Tocchet. He likes Elias Pettersson. He wants them both to stay. But as the days continue, with this relationship with Rick Tocchet, it does seem, and listen, the NHL is littered with examples of coaches and players that haven't got along. I always hearken back to Tampa with John Tortorella and Vincent Lecavalier. Lecavalier wanted the coach fired. Tortorella wanted the player traded. And Jay Feaster sat them both down and said, I'm not firing him and I'm not trading him. What you guys need to do is figure out how to coexist. And if everything is sort of predicated on, let's do whatever it takes to keep Quinn Hughes in the mix here, then they need to figure out a way for these two to have a semblance of a long-term, respectful relationship. Will that happen? Can that happen? Right now, it doesn't look like it, but time heals. People can change their minds. Relationships can get better. They can also get more so. Like right now, it doesn't look like it. But I always catch myself and say, that's an absolute, and things like relationships between players and coaches can change, or at least they can get to a level where they don't have to like each other, but they can tolerate each other. And we all think of Scotty Bowman. 364 days, the players hated him. And on day 365, they got the rings. So there are ways that players and coaches can get along. But if you're asking me right now, today, how does this thing look? Looks bad.
They've got to figure it out. They've got to figure it out. I don't think they should trade Pettersson this offseason, but I also don't think they can let the underachieving superstar force a trade of another star and the departure of a coach. Like, he's not in charge here. And I know we use this with regards to Miller and Pettersson of these are two adults, figure it out. But especially for coach and player, these are two adults, figure it out.
There are, having said that, there are teams that are looking at this and they're saying, like, it's always the arrogance of the general manager. This used to always be Glenn Sather, right? Whether it was Oilers or whether it was Rangers. Like, the arrogance of Glenn Sather was always, when we get him into our system, when we get him into our program, when we get him into our mix, when we get him into our, like, Glenn Sather was in love with the reclamation project. And I think there are a lot of general managers that are in love with the reclamation project because they're out to prove that they're smarter than everybody else. We can get the most out of Elias Pettersson. The problem is, it's Vancouver. We get him in here in Minnesota, Nashville, Carolina, Montreal, wherever. Throw your darts wherever you think that Elias Pettersson could land, where they would have a spot. and maybe the ability to absorb all, or if not most of the Elias Pettersson contract. There is always that arrogance about general managers. I don't think you can be a general manager without that arrogance.
This one's got it too. Joshua, Suter, Sherwood, like they've done it here too.
No, I wouldn't.
Listen, Rutherford has it. I think all. But hang on a second. I think all managers need to have that. They need to have that belief. Like, what was one of the when the Carolina Hurricanes picked up Mikko Rantanen, one of the first things you heard Eric Tulsky talk about was Rod Brind'Amour and our team and our coach, and this is why this is going. You need to have that belief in your system, in your organization.
Yeah,
for that to work. I think
you're right.
Most, if not all, managers carry that with them. So
I would also
there wouldn't be a marketplace. Like, listen, do I think that Elias Pettersson is at a place where you can call up the Islanders and say, Pettersson for Barzal 1-for-1, and let's get this thing done? No, you can't. But I do think that there are managers out there that would look at Elias Pettersson and say, let's just get him in here. That's what he needs. He needs a change of scenery.
I would draw a distinction between reclamation projects and undervalued late bloomers, players in ascension who haven't been given.
They are different, but it's still the same. Once we get this guy in our system, he's going to be better.
Yeah. You had a very interesting segment this week with Mr. Greg Wyshynski of ESPN.
That's rare.
Wonderful seeing you guys back together. You make hockey talk magic. You really do. So very pleased to see you guys getting the band back together. And the subject of Kiefer Sherwood's hits record came up. We're going to play the clip and then come back and discuss.
Okay.
And my theory was that Sherwood's record is crap because somebody scoring games in Vancouver was getting him a 5x multiplier on hits. It's the new Cal Clutterbuck. How else could he achieve such a feat? And I've tested my theory from my friends at ESPN Stats and Info, and here are the numbers.
Really? Hang on. Really?
At home, at home.
Okay.
Sherwood averaged 22.7 hits per 60 minutes.
Okay.
That is the 16th highest average in a season since 2005-2006. Okay.
Yeah.
On the road, Sherwood averaged 26.3 hits per 60 minutes. So he averaged almost 3 hits per 60 more on the road than at home. This man has earned his record, Marek. He is not the byproduct of some old fuddy-dud instructed to go 5x on the hits. He earned the record on the road with more hits than he had there than at home.
Did anyone ever do any research like this on all of those Islanders players? At how many hits they got on the road versus at home?
We certainly could. The numbers are publicly available on NHL.com. We could dive into them. If some enterprising person wanted to look at the Matt Martin numbers from when he had the record or the Cal Clutterbuck numbers from when he had the record, I'd be intrigued to see. It would really, unfortunately, put the damper on one of our favorite jokes, which is how the scorers at Nassau Coliseum basically would credit Cal Clutterbuck with a hit if he looked at a guy rather than even actually tried to hit him.
Very interesting that when Cal Clutterbuck. To me,
same in Washington with Brendan Witt back in the day.
Brendan Morrow in Dallas.
Oh my God.
Brendan Morrow got double digits every night in Dallas. He went on the road, 4 hits. Interesting. Yeah.
Listen, later in that conversation, I went on to tell the story about Dan McGillis with the Edmonton Oilers. Like the Philadelphia Flyers wanted a crusher on the blue line. Edmonton was trying to get Yanni Niinimaa away from the Oilers. And this is before the days where everybody watched every single game around the NHL. This is 1998, I want to say. Yeah. And so what Sather, essentially told all the official scorers at Northlands Coliseum, hey, fluff up the hit numbers for McGillis. So by the time it came around to trading for Yanni Niinimaa, the Flyers thought they were getting a killer. Now, Dan McGillis was a really nice player and a really nice defenseman, but he wasn't like pounding guys 12 times a game. But that's what Philadelphia thought that they were getting. And that actually helped move along that trade between the Oilers and the Philadelphia Flyers. I don't know if there was wouldn't be tampering. I don't know what the charge would be against the
fraud.
Fraud. Yeah, or fraud charges at Edmonton.
We're running short on time, so we'll do Ovechkin next week.
Sure.
But
presumably it's down.
Oh yeah. The Rogers deal, Jeff. What struck you about the re-upping with the NHL re-upping with Rogers?
Not surprised that they re-upped with Rogers. But the one thing that struck me about this one is I'm like all of us are curious to see what the future is for Gary Bettman. And there are three things that stand out, because right now this is like write the legacy time before shuffling off and relinquishing the commissioner's title. We all expect will go to Bill Daly, the deputy commissioner. And one of the big pieces is the Canadian TV deal. Now I look at that as one box. Like we're heading into. That's what I'm going to get at here is we're heading into peacetime. So there's the Canadian television deal, and that's done. I think we're all curious to see what the sub-licensing deals following this are going to look like, for whether it's TSN or whether it's Amazon, etc. I think we're all curious how that's going to look like. But the big piece here now, as he hands this portfolio over to Bill Daly, we assume, a big piece of the Canadian TV deal, that's done. A CBA done without a lockout. I do think that's important, like without a lockout or a pandemic. I think that Gary Bettman wants to do one of them clean and without a lockout. And that's why you're seeing a much friendlier tone heading into these discussions now with the Players Association. Like, I think we all expect this one to go relatively quickly. So there's another box to check. And then the third box that we all wonder about is expansion. And we're starting to hear numbers like $2 billion. So to me, it looks like, the final piece of the Gary Bettman legacy in the NHL, to me, it's three boxes. And the first big one has already been checked. Bill Daly will take on this position, and the Canadian TV deal is done.
Do you think
CBA is going to be done? I do think Amazon. I would again. I don't know. I'm not part of the conversation. Okay. I would assume. I don't know. I don't know what TSN. How TSN
I don't
would
think
be involved
TSN
here.
Is there. Yeah.
So I can't comment. But I would have. I mean, they've already sold off Mondays to Amazon, so that wouldn't surprise me.
Jeff, the last 12 years have taught TSN and Bell Media they can exist just fine without the biggest line item. They do
great tentpole events, right? Like their trade deadline coverage is exemplary. Free agent day is exemplary. They have, and I keep telling people too, one of the secret weapons that TSN has always had is Steve Dryden. I know that, Bob and Dregs have been great as insiders. Duffy is the Cadillac of hosts when it comes to these things. But Steve Dryden behind the scenes, like, he understands the evolving tastes of a hockey fan. And TSN's always been able to reflect that quickly. Yep. And a lot of that is.
And if you don't know Steve, he's the former editor-in-chief of the Hockey News. He's been at TSN, 20 years now, a director of hockey information or something like that. But he's he lives and breathes the sport, and he brings a lot of the great ideas to the fore. Okay. My Jef Marek Easter egg for today.
I always whiff on these.
And Blake, feel free to participate.
Okay.
So Alex Ovechkin, 892 goals in 1,485 games, 2 behind Gretzky, who did it in 2 additional games. Mm-hmm. They rank respectively 7th and 8th all-time in NHL history in goals per game. There are 6 players who score more goals per game in their career, minimum 200 goals, than Gretzky and Ovechkin.
Oof.
I am going to give you Cy Denny and Babe Dye because I don't think you were going to get either of them from the New York Americans or the original Ottawa Senators.
Can I get my geek hat on really quickly? Cy Denny, sorry Hall, sorry Makita, sorry Bathgate. Cy Denny was the first to curve a hockey stick. The 19th.
Really? Okay. And scored 247 goals in 329 games to rank 3rd all-time in goals per game.
Yeah. Legend, yes.
4 modern era players who are better goals per game than Gretzky and Ovechkin. Shoot.
Okay, Mike Bossy for sure.
Mike Bossy is 1st overall. He is the only NHL player to average more than 0.76 goals per game.
Can make the argument, even still with Ovechkin, with all due respect, that he was the greatest goal scorer of all time.
Of all time. 752 games for Bossy. If his back doesn't fall out, God knows how many more goals he scores.
One of the greatest.
Like his low water mark, I think, was 39 or something like
Terrible
that.
year.
Yeah, exactly. Bossy had a really down year. He only got 40 this year. Did they win the cup? Yeah, they won another cup.
Brett Hull in that mix?
I would have guessed Brett Hull. He would have been my second guess after Bossy. Alas, Brett Hull is 9th.
Oh, right,
slightly behind Ovechkin and Gretz.
I'm going to throw a dart here. Is Alex McGillney there?
No. A good shout. McGillney is he top 20? No. I did see him on the list somewhere. He's 38th.
I'll give you one more before I weigh it in.
Okay, let me throw one more out here. Is it Phil Esposito?
No. Phil Esposito is 13th.
Okay, a couple of down years, so I'm worried that it dragged him. But Teemu Selanne?
Nope.
No.
He's actually way down the
Is
list.
he?
I was
Okay.
surprised. He's in the 40s somewhere.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Would
Pavel
be
Bure.
Mario.
Pavel Bure.
Mario and Pavel Bure, very good, gentlemen.
Got
Lemieux
it.
is second. Pavel Bure is sixth. You're missing one.
Yari Curry.
Jeff, final guess.
Goals per game.
Guy Lafleur.
Is there major injury?
Sorry, Jeff?
Guy Lafleur.
No.
Is there major injury to this player?
No.
No.
In
Okay.
fact, he's active.
Oh, Leon Draisaitl.
No.
No.
Austin Matthews?
Very good, Jeff.
Really?
Austin Matthews
Holy
is fifth in
smokes.
NHL history at 0.64 goals per game. 397 in 622. That may not account for last night if they play.
See, I would have wondered about as well David Pasternak.
Pasternak, there are three other players in the top 20 all time. Pasternak is next up at 18,
No kidding.
McDavid at 19, Draisaitl at 20.
Interesting.
Anyways, thank you for
Fun
playing
exercise.
in my
Thank you.
Easter
And
egg
Cy Denny
game.
was the first to curve a stick.
And Cy
I
Denny.
woke up this morning and I said,
I was
I'm
like,
gonna
is
talk
that
about
really
Cy-
how he spells his name? It's not
Denny.
Dennehy, it's Denny.
No, Denny. Cy Denny. Yeah. I don't
Denny.
Great.
Lots of N's there. Can I buy an N?
Have a great show, buddy. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, boys.